whatever Star Wars is, I have no idea. We fought various wars in Starfleet, but I wouldn't call any of them a Star War. We just saw Star Trek Prodigy Episode 3, Starstruck. A lot of good momentum on that first episode. First 2 episodes. Technically Lost and Found. The last review I did for Prodigy was episode 1 and 2. So we started off on the right footing. I wouldn't say great footing, just right footing. This episode is hopefully a momentary stumble on the road to a good season. This is the episode that makes me wonder if we can really get a full season out of this show. Any momentum that this show had at the beginning seems to have come to it careened into a wall, and then everybody fell out of the car in a drunken stupor. This episode, it makes me wonder, honestly, how I'm going to make this video over 20 minutes long, because this episode feels kind of pointless. Plot development is almost zero. It's just entirely about a few moments of character development, and that's kind of it. It feels like the events of this episode could have been rolled into the next episode and we wouldn't lose a beat. When you're running a show that has like 10 half-hour long episodes, you don't have a lot of time to mess around, do you? But this episode manages to mess around. I went in kind of excited, and I came out feeling deflated, not angry, but a little bit more tired, and a little bit less looking forward to the next episode. So let's break down what actually occurs in this episode, if anything really occurs. So we're on the Protostar. Our main characters, Dal, Pog, Zero, rok-tahk, Gwyn, and Murph. Let's not forget Murph, the little slug, who, by the way, I think one of the people behind the show was saying that Murph, the blue slug, is actually a really, 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 really obscure reference to something that happened before, and that no one's guessed it yet, which makes me get the noggin jogging, Personally, I think Murph, I'm going to put it up on the main viewer, I think Murph is a baby Nagilum. Does anyone remember Nagilum from TNG? I think it's a baby Nagilum. We'll see how that works out, though. That's beside the point. We're on the Protostar. Of course, Janeway's on deck. She's a hologram. All the characters are saying, "Your forehead's smooth. What's that about?" They've never seen a human before, I suppose. Even though Gwyn's forehead's kind of smooth. Maybe it's a play on the idea of Star Trek aliens just being rubber foreheads. The rubber forehead aliens, when not having a lot of money. But, however, this is an animated show, and we can make characters look like whatever we want. Especially because we're in the Delta Quadrant, we can get some wild and crazy aliens. But we're going humanoid. Apart from rok-tahk, Murph, and Zero. Of course, Zero, we've seen Zero, a Medusan, before in Star Trek. You can look that up. I don't need to go into it. A Medusan. You'll figure it out. Janeway seems like Janeway. I'll give it that. Janeway in this episode kind of has that slight angry aloofness that Janeway has in her command style that makes Voyager very fun to watch at times. She's just she's slightly unapproachable, but yet is very reassuring, has a reassuring quality in her voice. It could be a perfect pick for training cadets, because she's not going to go super easy, but she's not going to kill them either. Now that I think about it, Janeway training programs were probably a good investment. Originally, I thought maybe Janeway was just there to sell the show, like it was just something they tacked on, but it feels a lot more natural now that you see the Protostar, and you see how it works, and you see where they are. Wouldn't Janeway be a great training program? You know? She's already been to the Delta Quadrant. She's dealt with an unimaginable amount of crap. And she ain't gonna take no crap. And by the way, she has her coffee in this episode. So they even bothered to make the hologram drink coffee. For those that haven't seen Voyager, Janeway likes to drink the coffee. Of course, Sisko drank the Raktajino. Picard drank the tea Earl Grey hot. And Kirk was drinking, "Give me the brandy. Where's the brandy? The Saurian brandy." And Archer drank, of course, bottles of beer, I think, that he had hid under his bed, and he would take out, and just him and Trip would drink the beer and watch water polo. I guess everybody drank something. The development in the original episode between Gwyn and Dal fancies himself the captain and tells Janeway program, "I'm the captain, I'm in control." And Dal now has to put Gwyn in the brig. So they find the brig, they put Gwyn in the brig. Now the tables have turned, right? Originally, Gwyn had rok-tahk, Dal, and the rest in the brig of the mining colony, and now Gwyn is in their brig. How the tables have turned, eh? It seems like the hunter has become the one who is doing the hunting. Gwyn now has to contend with this idea that she was an accomplice to her father, imprisoning people there for no reason. Ostensibly, she says it's because she believed that they were criminals, and the people brought to the mining colony were criminals. But you can tell by her expression that she doesn't really believe that, which is kudos to the animation team for getting subtle body animations across, because you can tell when people are saying something they don't believe. Voice acting was of course, very good, too. Voice acting is a big part of that. So they're talking to Gwyn. Absent-mindedly, the Protostar runs into a binary star system where one of the stars has begun to consume the other star, and it's about to cause some kind of stellar mass event, an explosion of ionized gas, if you will. The original course that the Protostar was on, that Dal put them on, even though Janeway said that was a bad idea, Janeway, believing Dal's the captain, let Dal do it, and they put them on this dangerous course. By the way, Janeway, for some reason, even though being a Starfleet AI, cannot determine that these people have never been to Starfleet Academy. They have zero training. She believes they're cadets, but you can't just be a cadet willy-nilly. You can't just walk in the door and then be called a cadet. That's not really how it works. Believe me, I know. I think we have to kind of overlook that. This is something we just have to accept, that the characters are not cadets, and that for some reason a Starfleet AI in hologram Janeway just believes that they are. But maybe the AI is so powerful that we're actually seeing the AI be a unreliable narrator in the story. Maybe the AI knows, like, wink wink, I know they're not Starfleet cadets, but we're just going to play along, wink wink. Don't worry, I'm not going to let anything really dangerous happen to the Protostar, but we'll let these kids have their way. Maybe that's what's going on. Maybe it's a little bit smarter than I'm giving it credit for. The Protostar is being sucked into this gravity well. Of course, your first instinct, and mine, would be to just use the warp drive. Use the warp drive to get out of the gravity well before you're that far into it. when you're really far into the gravity well, it's not so much of a good idea. It's better to slingshot around it. But somehow, when they get the red alert, they're already too far into the gravity well and nobody noticed. The ship didn't say anything. It's like, we just have to accept that by the time we notice we're in the gravity well of this binary star, it's too late to use the warp drive. We just have to assume that. So we're flying into this thing, and Dal says absentmindedly, divert all power to impulse engines, and they do, and wouldn't you know it, this removes the force field around the brig that they're keeping Gwyn in. Gwyn is our villain for this episode. Gwyn is trying to get off the ship to return to her father, even though she is... You can tell that Gwyn, on one hand, wants to be free of her father and see the stars for herself, but on the other hand, respects her father and has to return to him. She's an interesting character. She's at odds with herself. Okay? Dal, thinking that his Newton brain is kicking in Newton's third law, he's thinking, okay, we need to drop some cargo to get lighter so we can move faster. So he wants to eject all unnecessary cargo. Holy crap, we're jettisoning all unnecessary cargo on a Starfleet ship, just willy-nilly. Like, how much stuff is gone now? We ejected it all. I didn't see them go back and get it, but they ejected everything. This includes the escape pods. So now, in this series, we know that the Protostar does not have escape pods, unless we replicate some more. Okay? And wouldn't you know it, Gwyn is trying to get off the ship, all the escape pods are gone, so she activates the ship's shuttle replication program, so the Protostar can replicate shuttles. Is this commentary on Voyager? Remember how Voyager had endless amounts of shuttles that kept getting destroyed? And for purposes of the story, they just had to keep getting more? Maybe it was replicating them. The Protostar does it, even though it's newer, so that argument doesn't make much sense. But it is cool that we can actually see a shuttle get replicated. Gwyn is, of course, standing beside the replicator, waiting for it to replicate, and Dal has told rok-tahk to go capture Gwyn, our prisoner, our escaped prisoner. Rok-tahk and Gwyn have a little bit of a fight, but they're fighting in the middle of the bay that is assembling a shuttle. Very interesting imagery. You're seeing a shuttle be replicated before your eyes, and two people are fighting inside the shuttle as it's being constructed. And rok-tahk gets stuck in the shuttle as it's being constructed and smashes through the glass. We finally see truly how big and strong rok-tahk is to ram through transparent aluminum laddie on the shuttle. But finally, when push comes to shove, Dal has to put his pride aside and say, okay, Janeway, help. Janeway, please help us. And Janeway, of course, turns on and gives them the basic rundown on what they should do, right? So we need to, turn the gravity back on. So turn the artificial gravity on. They do. Rok-tahk and Gwyn fall down humorously because they're fighting in the shuttle bay. They have to turn on the inertial dampeners. They have to fly the Protostar into the explosion. I don't know why. Why do they say this? This is a common trope in sci-fi. When you don't know how to get out, fly in. We can't get around, so we'll fly through. And they're relying on the explosion of the star to propel them outward. I wouldn't do that. I would think about a slingshot maneuver. But, and just pray that we don't go back in time, like in TOS. Or, Star Trek 4, Voyage Home. But they don't do that. They use the explosion of the star and the ejecta to propel them outward, and somehow it just works. The shields are back on, so that's good. So yeah, Janeway's like gravity, shields, impulse drive, inertial dampeners, let's go. It's all by the book stuff that you would know if you spent one day in the academy, but they didn't, so they were in a very dangerous position. Dal in this episode is struggling with becoming a captain. Dal has been someone that has ran from authority his whole life, but now is in authority. This is the theme of this episode. At the very least, this episode had a thematic core, okay? And it's exemplified in the scene between Rok-tahk and Dal. Dal does not want to surrender control of the protostar directly to Janeway, because Janeway would fly back at the Federation. Janeway gives Dal and the rest a crash course. There's a good name for this episode, Crash Course, instead of Starstruck. Dal gets a crash course on what the Federation is. Dal doesn't believe it. Janeway says the Federation is this unified body of star systems and planets that are engaged in interstellar exploration for the purposes of peace. Okay. Now, ask other aliens. They may disagree, but Janeway lays it out there. She's not lying. She just says what it is. Dal doesn't agree because Dal has been burned by authority so many times in his life, and he's not willing to accept the authority of the Federation. And then he's explaining this to the crew, how they should ignore the Federation. Rok-tahk is initially more amenable to the idea. And Rok-tahk says something like, well, you're in authority now. Are you lying? And a light went off in my head, and I realized that's what this episode was about. And if we had have leaned more into that, this would have been a great episode. Instead, we lost that emotional core. We flicked it away for a boring action, get out of this problem without dying plot. This just kind of sucks. So Dal is saying authority always lies. They make it sound good for you, but really they're just getting what they want. But Dal is in authority now, and he's not lying. So if that can be true, can it be possible that the Federation isn't lying? And now, for the first time in Dal's life, being in a position of authority, is now wondering if there's other people out there like him who are in authority but are not villains. So now it's planted the seed in his mind. And now he's going to be, for the next 10 episodes or however long it's going to go on, he's going to be thinking about what the Federation actually is. And they will willingly return to it, I believe. They will return the protostar to where it belongs. Unless it was legitimate salvage. Seafaring rules apply. Legitimate salvage. Is the protostar legitimate salvage? Does it belong to the diviner? If the diviner caught the protostar and killed everybody on it, then it's not salvage. But if the protostar was just forgotten there, then it is. So, does it belong to the Federation? That remains up in the air. Speaking of the diviner, we did see him more in this episode, but we've seen just what amounts to a glorified visual of him. He just stands there saying, "Where's my ship? We need to get my ship. Dreadnought. Execute Order 66." Except he says something else. And so we know that Protostar is on the lam, and we know that Dreadnought and the diviner are going to try to find him, Dal and the rest. By the way, we find out that the chimerium they were mining is used for cloaking technology. So they turn on the chimerium cloak on the ship. Like the diviner activates his ship, and the ship flies away. And I believe the mining colony actually is the thing that cloaks. Maybe it's a little bit hard to say, but it's a very cool looking effect when the chimerium cloak activates. It spreads. It doesn't just all cloak at once. It, like, little pockets of it start to disappear. It's a very cool visual that you should check out. It's the coolest looking thing in this episode was that. And they get away from the star. And Dal has to come to terms with his role as captain. And now we're prepared to kind of listen to Janeway. And Janeway has various statements of affirmation. You're a good crew. You got potential. Let's get underway. And Dal's thinking, hey, maybe we can really learn how to fly this ship, Janeway, let's run Starship Operations 101, shall we? And then the episode just kind of ends. So, what was really the point of this episode other than Dal's new position of authority? A reluctant captain becoming a confident captain. Nothing else really happens in this episode. The plot itself in this episode is a backdrop to the thematic character development of Dal and Gwyn. That's it. And you could have easily had that in the next episode. You could have basically cut this. So I felt a little burned coming out of it. All that being said, I'm gonna have to. First episode was better. I'm gonna have to go 5.5 on this. Let's take it or leave it. When I give something a 5, I'm thinking, hey, well, it was just an episode. Like, it's not horrible. Like, it didn't kill me. Like, a 5 is earned if your episode does not actively ruin my life. So, but this was just a hair better than 5. So I'm being very generous when I give it a 5.5. Really, it's probably a 5, but I'm doing 5.5 because there was an interesting emotional core, a little tidbit there for your brain to chew on later. And, will kids like this? I don't think kids are going to like this episode so much because it wasn't as Star Warsy as the first episode. No offense to Star Wars people. Whatever Star Wars is, I have no idea. We fought various wars in Starfleet, but I wouldn't call any of them a Star War. This was Prodigy, episode 3. To get into the nitty gritty, I could not identify where the impulse drive was. Can anybody, if anybody notices this and wants to say in the comments, can anybody point out to me where the impulse drive is? I cannot see an impulse exhaust port anywhere. I looked. They mention impulse drive. They use it. I couldn't see it. It's not on the back of the nacelles, is it? Oh, don't be that. Don't do that. Protostar looked very clean. It looked very futuristic. It looked a little bit too metallic and bright on the inside, a little bit too Kelvin on the inside, unfortunately. It doesn't have that, it doesn't have the inviting feeling that the best starships had. Unfortunately, that's become very common in Starfleet. Basically, everything after the Galaxy class has an uninviting, sterile feel to it that I'm not down with. I don't really dig the really metallic, clean look. Like Voyager kind of had it. The Defiant kind of had it, but not as bad. And this has it very bad. Protostar looks like you would lose your mind if you tried to live in it for too long. We need some carpet, guys. Would it kill you to just have carpet? Would it kill you to use an earth tone here or there? Like, would it kill you to use a red or a brown? Why do we need to be walking around inside an iPhone? Why are we living in an iPhone right now? It's very annoying. The Dingwall is kitschy, you see? It's got a certain fun factor to it. It's got some blues, and it's got some grays, and it's got some funny colors on the screen. Yay! That's Prodigy. That's episode 3. Starstruck. Crash Course. Should have been called. What did we learn? Protostar is flying around, Janeway's there, and we're being chased by Dreadnought and the Diviner. That's exactly what I would have said at the end of episode 2, the last episode. So mechanically, plot-wise, we didn't get anywhere. That's what I'm trying to get across to you. Kids might be bored by this episode. That being said, okay, like, how many kids are watching this show? Okay, like, are kids watching this, or is it just adults? Is it just old Star Trek fans like me watching it? I wonder, like, do kids really care about this? Like, I think maybe this is for old people. I think maybe this is for old Star Trek fans, and it's pretending to be a kid's show. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I can't imagine me liking this when I was 5, let alone however old I am now. And yet I somehow try to like it, because I have to. Oh well. That's Prodigy, episode 3. And this is Mark. I've been your host for this evening. And now I'm going to be gone. Goodbye.